Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the State Board of Elections meeting. Jake Weissman filling in for our chairman, who's running 15 minutes late, and then we'll gracefully give him back the gavel. We have a declaration of quorum present, so we can begin. Are there any additions to the agenda? Fantastic. Like to wait on approval of minutes until the chairman gets here. Any objections to that?
Okay.
Fantastic. So let's move on to the administrator's report. Mr. Demarinis?
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Ms. Berry and I have attended various meetings with federal and state agencies, and, it's just more of the welcome to elections and creating new partnerships moving forward for the 2024 elections. Ms. Berry is going to be representing the state at the EAC Standards Board. Mr. Mickley, who is the local board representative, he's from Howard County as the election director there. So, yeah. On a couple of things just here, myself, one, I've toured and visited the warehouses for Garrett, Allegheny, Baltimore City, Calvert, and yesterday I just did Prince George's as well. So that was my October trips throughout the state of Maryland. I couldn't believe how far Garrett County really is in the state. It's just a lot of hills. It's gorgeous out there. It was gorgeous to see the leaves turn, but it is far out there. Every one of them have been very enlightening, and I think that it's been so far extremely well received by the locals, and I've gained a lot of knowledge from each and every visit. On October 2nd, the state board, we issued a press release for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that we just wanted to highlight the voter confidentiality program here at the state board for survivors of domestic violence, and making sure that their voice is still be heard at the ballot box so that they're never silenced. And I just wanted to make sure that it was brought forth, and it's a very important topic, and making sure that they're not in any sort of way feel as though that they're intimidated or have any of their right to vote, basically, being disenfranchised because of being a survivor. So just wanted to highlight that and make sure that we honor that month of awareness. Then finally, on some of the things, on the 19th of October, we held our biannual conference at the Doubletree Hotel. While it was mandatory attendance from the local directors and board members and council, it was still very well received. We sent out a survey recently from it. We have right now received over 30 responses from the survey. So, we're collecting all the data here, but right now, we have been receiving a lot of overall good remarks from everything there. I think that basically what we've seen is that the morning presentations on the artificial panel and the Albert sensors were extremely well received, as well as the speaker from the EAC, Commissioner Hicks, and his talk was very well received. Again, we want to thank the governor and the speaker for attending and kicking off the conference. I thought that was a very, warm reception there. And just wanted to also thank, of course, all the staff that put this together. And, without them, it was not going to be a well put on conference. So, but right now we did some looking for some feedback, and of course, doing the lessons learned on how to make the conference even better in 2 years. So where we can take, we've hired, as you can see, a lot of new people, but most notably, we have Verona Williams now has officially joined our agency as the Director of Finance and Administration. I reported to you earlier about her hire, so we are now having that, and Shelley is helping her transition to get up to date on all the budget stuff. And on the local board there, just wanted to say Erin Perone has been selected as the election director for the Carroll County Board of Elections. So that was Katie Berry's replacement over in Carroll County. And she had come from the state board previously. So we're all very appreciative of her. And she is going to be hitting the ground running up in Carroll County. And I don't think that there's going to be a loss of knowledge in there at all. And one of the things is I finally found my replacement as well. Alan Norfleet has been hired as the Director of Candidacy and Campaign Finance and will begin on November 1st. He has an extensive background in candidacy, more in campaign finance, and actually worked at the Federal Election Commission at one point. We have one departure. Chris Lohr is leaving on November 1st. She works in human resources. She has been with us for, I believe, close to 10 years. And she is moving on to another HR position in the state. We're sad to see her go. She, of course, just been a valuable resource to everything here, and we wish her all the best in her future endeavors. On another little note here that I can't really speak about at this time here, but I just wanted to make mention is that we're wrapping up with the Office of Legislative Auditors, and you will be receiving a final report from them this week or so. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that and just put that on your radar, and we'll be able to respond once it becomes public for you. But that's all our big announcements and meetings. We didn't have any election directors meetings to report upon in October, so I turn it now over to Melissa and Marianne for election reform and management.
I'm actually going to have Jen McLaughlin start off. I'm not sure if she's met this new crew yet, but Jen, all you.
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I've met most of you or all of you so far. Nice to see you again. Thank you for having me. Going to just tell you a little bit. Lion's share of what I work on is mail-in balloting. So you'll see in your administrator's report, first text to cure. In 2023, the General Assembly passed legislation requiring us to offer texting as a way to cure unsigned ballots going forward. Back in 2022, the SB, together with the Montgomery County Board and a vendor called Global Mobile, piloted a program to do this, which went very well. I think everybody was pleased with that. So we've contracted now again with that same contractor, Global Mobile, who will provide a solution so that all local boards of elections can offer that in 2024. In addition, 2021 General Assembly legislation requires SBE to mail out a mail-in ballot application to all registered voters who are not already signed up for mail-in voting. We had to do that in 2022, and we're doing it. We have to do it again in 2024. So we bid that work out to a company called Art. The winning bidder was a company called Art and Negative. I'm happy to say Lanham, Maryland-based MBE, who won that bid. We are going to the Board of Public Works late in November. And that means in 2024, approximately 3.5 or more than 3.5 million Maryland voters will receive in the mail a application to become a mail-in voter. That application includes instructions, the form, as well as a postage prepaid return envelope. Happy to answer any questions.
I just want to, this is the last year of that based upon legislation that the state board had to do. It was required legislatively.
Correct. It was uncodified language in the 2021 bill and specifically spoke to 2022 and 2024.
And then I can jump in before I pass off to Marianne. We are in the process of approving voting locations, early voting centers, polling place plans, ballot drop boxes, kind of all of them all at once. We have a batch coming at you today for the early voting centers. They weren't due until the 16th. So we were able to get some together that were submitted on the earlier side, and then hope to have the rest for your review shortly after that. And then the polling place plans will come after that. And I think that's everything that I had in this section. Mary Ann, did you want to share an update on all things election judge?
Sure. Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see most of you, if not all of you, at the biennial. Meet you in person. It was great to see you. Let's see. So for election judge recruitment, we're continuing our efforts like as we did last cycle. We were really successful last time. We're working with some of the same partners that we worked with before, Bet the Vote, Power the Polls. They've just been amazing in their outreach efforts and providing us substantial list. I provided some detailed numerical data in the report. I've also included, there's an election judge and page program web page link in there, so you can look at any details on those programs and the applications. Also, we have developed a recruitment toolkit in response to the 2023 House Bill 1200 that requires us to create a marketing campaign for election judge recruitment for the local boards. So that should be available soon. It's under final review. Recently, on October 12th, there was a state hiring event at the Baltimore Armory, and our election reform management administrator, Crystal McGinn, attended to drum up some election judges for the state. And as a result, there were a few that signed up. So we were excited to be able just to share that with folks that were looking for employment. So the provisional ballot application update. For those of you, if you don't remember, we have combined the provisional ballot application and same-day registration application, and samples of those were just received, hard copies. So we're taking a look at those now and doing any final tweaks that may be needed. So that's where we are with that. And does anyone have any questions for me? If not, I think we'll go to registration. Yes, Jake?
I'll call on myself. Just curious, for election judge recruitment, how are we matching up compared to previous years in terms of how we look in big picture?
We look really good. I think the number overall, let me go back to it. I don't want to, 1,424 applicants right now. It's really early. Nobody has complained. I haven't heard any complaints yet. So that's a great thing, right? So it's, like I said, it's very early. It's not even November yet. Historically it starts after Labor Day when they start really gearing up and thinking about recruitment, more seriously. So, I don't see anything negative for
we're ahead
sure.
of where we should be right now.
I'm sorry?
You feel like we're ahead of where we should be right now?
I think we're doing really well. I mean, like I said, it's very early.
I think, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I think at one point here, I think any sort of election administrator would tell you that, you never have enough election judges. And, where we're at is, a good place, but you never say that we're doing fantastic because, and this is one of the things as I went around talking to the local directors about this question here was, yes, people are signing up. Yes. But it's when we start doing the trainings and we start really starting to get to the meat of the matter, that's when we start really seeing everyone there. And then we get to know a little bit more. So, are we hitting the panic button now? No, but, we are we're monitoring it and being ever vigilant. And the more we get, the better off we are. People get sick, people everything else kind of come up. So, it's a one day, no day failure type of approach there. So, that's, we're really pushing the button and getting as many recruitments as possible. So,
No, that sounds great, but this is, I don't want to be optimistic, God knows, but you know,
right.
this is not at least bad news. So
Right, exactly. Right.
And then I can jump in and cover voter registration if you want. Just a couple of things that I'm going to highlight. Obviously, Baltimore City redistricting will be happening, which has an effect on our voter registration database. So we'll be supporting that in any way that the city needs help. And then performing an audit, again, similar to what we did for the statewide election, hopefully sooner than later. In terms of our MD voters, our voter registration database development, currently we actually have all of our election judge, we can call it a module in there where we manage the election judge program and assignment. And House Bill 1200 has changed that a little bit. So we're just trying to make it a little bit easier for our local boards to identify election judges who are returning and to pay them their extra $100 when they do. So that is actually much harder than it sounds. So that will be taking up the development for the rest of the year in that database to get it up and running and ready for the primary. Another big development that we've been working on is, as you know, I think we're up to either 7 or 8 counties who have the high-speed sorters for incoming mail-in ballots. We had, I want to say, 4 or 5 last election cycle. We brought them in pretty late to the game, so they were not up and fully functional and operating with all the bells and whistles that they have. They need to kind of be able to crunch data in a way that our system can recognize. So our MD Voters team is also working with a group of locals to figure out exactly what they need and to make sure that we have those high-speed sorters working in a way that's most efficient for them and will help them meet especially that 2-day receipt requirement of House Bill 535. I don't think we have a significant update from either our audits or Eric. It's kind of business as usual there, doing all the normal audits and Eric things. And then we have the numbers for you from MBA. And unless you have any questions about that, I will probably, I guess, pass it back to you, Jared.
Yep. I'll take over.
I have a quick question. Oh, our chair is here. Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
We can't hear you.
Sure.
Let me ask my question while.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's got a lot back.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to
What
know.
about now?
Have any more states dropped out of Eric over the last month?
No, they haven't.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to continue on with the candidacy and campaign finance portion of it now. Right now, we have 43 candidates that have filed at SBE. Once again, all the candidacy filings are scheduled by appointment, so that seems to be streamlining the process. Public financing, Baltimore City right now has we're waiting for 4 more appointments from the city council president for their commission. And to date, we've had 2 candidates that have filed the notice of intent to participate, one for mayor and one for city council president. And I'm scheduled to meet with the Prince George's Fair Election Fund Commission in November. That is going online for its first time in the 2026 election. So just, getting all the prep work ready for them on that front there. Enforcement actions here. Once again, I would just highlight one of the bigger ones, which was the Talbert Integrity Project there for a $4,500 failure to file a 48-hour report, because that was a super PAC that failed to file, and we worked closely with the state prosecutor's office on that one there. and just our regular filings that we found throughout our audits. If there's no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Keith for this now.
Okay, so the procurement side, there's nothing on that? Didn't know if you want to report on that.
No, well, that's after information systems and technologies and security. So I guess I'll just run through this here now. We have the new poll book solution here. For the 2026 cycle, we're still testing it, and hopefully we're looking for all our user acceptance testing at the end of this year. So we'll be looking forward for that. We are now implementing our contingency plan for the 2024 election. And that is now, making sure that the existing poll books are functioning for this election. And we have had, looking at, procuring contract extensions with the vendor and moving forward with all the upgrades necessary for the current poll books and batteries that are needed for that. On the new system, new voting system project, we've had our kickoff on October 16th, and we're going to onboard a contract manager. We onboarded a contract manager for it, Bill Williams. He had managed, he's going to manage the development and the issuance of the RFP. On the new MD Chris system, we've also started to interview a project manager there and, to procure a off-the-shelf campaign reporting information system there. And we're trying to have the project manager in place by the 1st of November and to start moving out the requests for proposals by the, end of this year or by the early spring of 25. The cybersecurity team there is just, making sure that we're aligned with the state cybersecurity and AI policy there. So that's been a good little meeting there. And as you can see in our procurement section here, what's in development is kind of a little bit known there with the RFPs. And we've just recently awarded a few from the BPW, Clear Ballot, which provides our audit of the voting system, and because they do all the ballot images there. So they're going to be auditing the ballot images for the 2024 primary and general elections. That contract has been awarded as well. And the provisional ballot application printing went to R.R. Donnelly and Sons for that. So those are underway, and we're just moving forward with it as well. And we have our voter education program that is, we've exercised that option period as well. So for the 2024 election, so we're going to start really moving forward with some voter education and outreach with that. Those are all the procurements there. And now I'll turn it on over to Keith for the project management section.
Can anyone hear me now or no?
Yes.
Okay. There's quite a few hands. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Janet, I saw your hand first, then
Yeah.
Carlos, and then Jake. All right.
I
Thank you,
noticed, I didn't notice if you mentioned it, but I see in your written report, the document scanning solution, RFP, to scan, index tag and OCR, all these records and everything. I just think that's wonderful. I've been involved in projects like that in the real world. And I know it's time consuming and complicated when you have a lot of different formats, but it's extremely worth doing. And I was very happy to see that that's something that's in the works. So Go for it. Go for it.
It's great. Keith is the project lead on that one there. And yeah, every time it is a massive, massive undertaking. Yes. And it's one of those things that we're doing baby steps, but we're going to start that process.
Good.
And I thank you for, I'm sorry, I just wanted to thank board member Millicent for her recommendation and her, push for the document management system. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Carlos?
Thank you, Chair. For the new voting system, as well as the new campaign reporting information system, is there a point in the process? So right now we're starting to develop, I guess, the criteria for the request for proposal. Is there a step in that process that involves those coming before the board and us getting kind of up to speed on them and maybe having some input?
I guess right now we're still just looking at the technical aspects of it all. But I'll be happy to kind of discuss that a little bit more with the drafting of the RFP and the process. And when we get proposals, one of the things is we're probably looking at making sure that there's demonstrations, and we'll make sure that the board is aware of those demonstrations.
Thank you. And do you have a ballpark idea? Are these $100,000 projects, million, 10 million, just order of magnitude?
Voting system is going to be, tens of millions. The MD Chris system is usually, I would like to make it under $1 million. That's when it started, but it'll probably be in the millions at that point there. Not the tens of millions, but that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Carlos. Chair recognizes Vijay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marinas, first off, thank you for all this information. I feel like there's a lot in here that's new, and just thank you for that. I want to go back to the poll book contingency plan for a second. Can you just share with us in terms of how you feel this is going? I got a question from, an elected official earlier today about our confidence that the current vendor can handle what we need for the 2024 election. Can you just share kind of how you're feeling that's going?
I think that my confidence level is good. I never want to say high about that. But the reason was this is existing poll books, right? So the election directors, the community, and the judges and everyone else has already have a level of understanding of this. So it's not like brand new or developing a different contingency plan with that. So, the knowledge base is there for it. And the current system, we have talked to the vendor. They're very much on board. They want to make sure that we have a successful election just as much as we do. And so that, they're 100% with us. And I am, one of the things is because it's, existing here, I've scoured the United States for other poll books here to help supplement our number as well. I might have something to report in the next board meeting or so on that front there. But so we're looking forward to trying to get a few more poll books as well to help us in the 2024 election. But overall, I think the vendor knows this. ES&S is the vendor for the poll books, and they have the voting system. This is a system that we've used in the past and been successful with. And, I think the education for the election judges and for the training purposes there is, minimal at this point here because it's already been used, for past elections or so. So it's just making sure that the batteries and everything else and getting all the licenses that while you were kind of not, moving forward to a new system, making sure that they're up and running. And so with the procurement team and everyone here, we're moving forward, and I think we'll be ready for 2024. And that's, what we're trying to move forward with.
And we feel good about the technology and the security?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. for that question. Thank you for your response. Jared?
Okay, and I think that now goes over to project management. Keith?
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, board members. Before you is the report of many of the efforts of the Project Management Office. If there are any questions, I'm ready to entertain them.
Okay. And then just wanted to highlight a couple of things from the locals. I think one of the things that, it's in the report there, what Calvert is doing on election judges and how they recruit, and Cecil County is beginning some, with conversations with high schools to implement their PAGE program there. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight in particular is with Mayo, and one of the things that I talked about earlier was making sure that we have good knowledge transfer and engaging with the locals. With the help of David Garris, the president over there, they have instituted a mentoring program at Mayo so that, veteran election directors, I didn't want to say old because, no one really likes to hear that, but more seasoned, as I grow there too, will help out the newly appointed election directors. And with this, we can have a good knowledge transfer, between, like counties, people with, so that they understand it and, help create that building of the community again, that no one's an island. And so, and we're here to make sure and facilitate that as well. So I think that that's one of the things that I'm happy with, and it has been well received so far in Mayo. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank David for help in, introducing that and implementing that part of our overall vision as well. And then with that, I end my report. And so thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And now it seems that we have a quorum, at least to approve the minutes. I would entertain a motion at this time before we go into the AG's report. Oh, yes, Janet, go ahead.
There are two minor errors in the minutes. One is a reference on page 2 to Vanessa Atterbury. Atterbury should be spelled B-E-A-R-Y, not B-E-R-R-Y. And at the bottom of page 8, I'm referred to as Mr. Mellon, so that's fine. But Atterbury, B-E-A-R-Y.
Thank you very, very much for that. With those recommended amendments and adjustments, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Carlos? Was that a second? I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought you were. Jake, go ahead. I saw your green light up. You were like,
I was
Jake,
just moving to approve.
What's that? Okay. It has been properly motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
It's probably seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those who
Sorry, can I ask one question, Mr. Chair? It does not appear that the minutes are on the SBE website. Can we just make sure we get them up there?
Yes, now that they're,
we'll
make sure
now
that they're
that
up
they're
there.
approved. So now they're, which is a process we're conducting. All those in favor of the minutes, please designate by raising your hand. Yay. All right. Looks like we do not have we have 3. Oh, okay. There's Carlos. So it is unanimous, and we move the minutes approved as amended. Thank you guys for that. Now I want to hear from the AG's report. Back to the agenda.
Good afternoon, members of the board. There is nothing to report this month. You still have one matter of pending litigation. Nothing in it has changed in the past 28 days since your last meeting. The pertinent deadline in that case for the other parties, not our side, remains October 31st.
All right, thank you very much for that. Now we're moving on to approval of proposed regulations. Jerry, could you please present or have staff present the recommended COMAR regulations being proposed?
Melissa is going to handle those for us,
Thank you
for
very
the reg and explain everything there for you. But I'll be happy, both of us, to answer the questions.
Thank you.
I'll just go down the list starting at the top. The first one is 3307, 3307-0801. And that is the challengers and watchers regulation. We are proposing a change that would codify the current practice of allowing original signatures as well as a copy of an original signature, but not a cursive font. So just kind of clarifying so that our local boards have some clear guidance when they get challengers and watchers certificates. Did you want me to go through all of them and then regroup at the end, or do you want to ask questions as we go along?
Yeah, let's take a pulse of the board members. What do you guys think? Do you want to do this piecemeal one by one, or do you want to hold off to the end for discussion? What are we looking at?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
Jake, go ahead.
I think it's just cleaner to just do them as we review them, and then we can move on to the next one, not having to worry about the last one. But
All right, sounds good. Can anyone? Okay, yeah, Jake, go ahead.
yeah, so I'm very excited for this regulation. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve 33.07.08.01.
All right, there has been a motion to approve. Is it properly seconded by Carlos? Thank you very much. You'll recognize. And any discussion?
I pulled my hand back down because in the discussion stage, I want to understand it.
Okay, well, let's second it first. Is there a second to the motion to approve? All right, seeing that there is no second, the motion fails. Carlos?
Yeah, I've got a question for it. So can you give me an example where you wouldn't need or require an original signature?
Just a photocopied. So if someone scanned or signed, right, and then scanned that document to a challenger and watcher, they would be able to print that off of their computer as long as it had started as a wet signature. The differentiation that we're trying to make here is that you can't use, I forget the name of the font, but there's a font that looks like cursive font, and put that in the signature block. It had to have at some point in time been a wet signature that was copied and scanned or something of that nature.
Okay, thank you. And Jake, if you want to make a motion.
Yeah, the reason I'm excited for this is if just to use a statewide campaign as an example, campaigns end up having hundreds and hundreds of these. Instead of what is the practice is the campaign manager, the chair, the treasurer, someone authorized, signs one, and then they're photocopied. And there's been questions of, well, can't we just use the signature button on Adobe, which has its own problems because that one is, I mean, anybody can do that. But at the same time, not having a scenario where somebody has to sit there and sign hundreds of these, which is just awful. So this is kind of what this is getting at.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? Chair recognizes Jake.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? It has been properly seconded. All those in any discussion at this time? Further? Seeing none, all those in favor of the proposed regulation 330700801, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
All right, I will move on to electioneering. And this is really just a whole lot of words that mimic the law. with the addition of a sentence at the end that clarifies our current practice. That is that the local boards do not need to go to draw the no electioneering line, that you can use signs that say no electioneering. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Hearing or seeing no questions at this time, is there a motion to approve the regulation? Yes. Carlos?
To approve.
And is there a second? It's been properly seconded. On any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please demonstrate by raising your hand. It's unanimous. The motion to approve has been properly properly accepted. All right, the floor is yours, Melissa.
Okay, and the last three are all motivated. The last four are all motivated by kind of the same thing. House Bill 410 defined a polling place in a way that includes an election day polling place. And so we're proposing changes to some regulations that speak of polling place in terms of election day and early voting. So now we are including a specific reference to early voting to ensure that those regulations also apply to early voting where it isn't specified. So the first one is 33110302. Which allows for it currently doesn't address a scenario where a person appears to vote in person on election day or during early voting. So this adds the early voting provision that mirrors the election day polling place provision. So they will be required to cast a provisional ballot if they have already been issued an absentee ballot. And then do you want me to, I guess I'll stop there, answer questions, and then move on to the other part of the 1103. Uh-oh.
I move we accept that regulation.
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear you.
1.11. Point 02? Trying to catch you.
Mr. Chairman, we didn't get any of that.
Okay. I'm still trying to. What about now?
Now we can.
Okay. Thank you. Having a few technical difficulties. Were there any questions regarding the legislation? Proposed
I
reg?
think Ms. Millicent had a motion.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just
thank you.
move we accept 33.11.03.02.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's properly seconded. The chair recognizes Jay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please. Thank you guys very much. It is unanimously approved. And now we're moving on, Melissa, to 08.
Yep. So 08, same thing is cleanup, just adding early voting centers. So this provides, there's a long list that comes before this, and it sets out the location and then defines what is timely for that location. And so this says that if you choose to return your ballot to an early voting center, you need to do that before the last day that the early voting center is open. If you don't get it in by then, you can use any of the other options in that long list.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the proposed regulation? Chair recognizes Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve regulation 11.03, .08.
Is there a second? Thank you very much. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion to approve has carries. All in favor. Moving on to 33.16.03.01. The floor is yours, Melissa.
Thanks. These get shorter as we go along. So this just adds early voting center to our issuance of provisional ballots, allows for them to be issued in the early voting location in addition to polling place.
Any questions? Points of clarity? Hearing none, seeing none. Is there a motion to approve the proposed regulation?
Make the motion
Chair
to
recognizes Jake.
16.03.01.
Oh, three, oh.
Is there a second? Yeah, 301.01. Thank you very much, Janet. Is there a second? I second. Chair seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of the proposed regulation, please signify by raising your hand. So moved. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we are moving on to 33.17.06.10. The floor is yours, Melissa.
Thanks. Last one. This is the electioneering regulation that mirrors election day for early voting. Again, specifies that you don't have to draw the 100-meter line. And then there is some cleanup in the regulation that the 100-meter no electioneering zone needs to start at the entrance closest to the voting location, as opposed to the actual entrance into the voting room. And that's everything on that one.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Is there any questions, points of clarity? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the proposed regulation 3.17.06.10. Jake?
Like to move to approve.
It's been properly moved. Is there a second? It has been properly seconded by Janet. Thank you very much. And is there any discussion? All right, thank you. No, just hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve 3.17.06.10, please signify by raising your hand. We have a quorum. Thank you very much. The motion carries. All right. Thank you so very much, Melissa, for that, for guiding us through. Also, now we are moving on in our agenda to approval of Department of Legislation, Secretary of State. Jared, do you want to walk us through this one?
Yes, sure. So this bill was departmental from the Secretary of State, and I'm asking the board to, approve this one as well, so that we can then say that we're in support of this. Basically, the bill eliminates a provision for the Secretary of State where there was a filing that they received, which is on the beneficial ownership of businesses with contracts of $200,000 or more, and at the Secretary of State's office. And they would just get the beneficial owners at that point there. And what it was is it's just combining that information with the Title 14 filings currently with the State Board of Elections that have, if a business has, if you do business with a government entity of $200,000 or more, and you have to disclose all your political contributions. So this now will include basically the owners on the registration page. Honestly, I think that this does two things. One, it streamlines a little bit of government efficiency. So now that these businesses are not filing in two different locations, filings, that now they'll just be filing with us. And the other portion of this is that it creates greater disclosure as to some of the owners behind these businesses, because these filings here of the owners of the businesses might just be the business itself, making a contribution to a political campaign, or a business entity with or any sort of entity or developer. Now those LLCs or those entities that are just more that have the contracts, now we'll have, at least the public will have an idea of who their ownership is. This is already public information, and it was already being disclosed at a different location. So it's not like we're adding new disclosure requirements. We're just combining it into one location and making it a little bit easier for the public to digest and have one-stop shop. So while there will be a little bit of changes in our software and registration page, it's something that we will be able to do and move forward with it. But I just wanted the board's affirmation on this departmental bill here so that we can support it as with the Secretary of State's office. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jared. As it stands now, it is a bill being brought, for a point of clarity, this is a bill being brought to the legislature during next session, or has been?
It will be. It is an approved departmental bill for the Secretary of State's office.
But it will be proposed on upcoming session.
Right. So,
okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. Jake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mariners, just a clarification here. This is not going to require another form to be filed. This is not putting an extra burden on businesses that do business with the state. This is just changing how we collect that information and consolidating that information.
Correct. Right. So this is already a requirement. If you do business with the state, you have to file your ownership papers with the Secretary of State's office, and you still have to register with the State Board of Election to file the semi-annual campaign contribution disclosure statement. So instead of filing your owners over there and this paper here, we're just basically putting it all together. Additionally, the Secretary of State's portion of it wasn't even electronic, and they would paper copies. So this actually will help streamline it in a sense, because ours is electronic, and that they can update it and change. We have a little bit more robust capabilities on that.
Great, and we talk about Title 14 every meeting, so I just want to make sure of this. Businesses are told when they do business with the state that this is one of the forms that they have to fill out.
Yes, it's a boilerplate language in every state contract. In the RFP language, that it's, that they have to comply with Title 14. The other thing too, which is important now on this here, is a nice little factor is that if a contract is approved by the Board of Public Works, which is the $200,000 mark, that the person has to certify to the Board of Public Works that they have filed this statement of doing Title 14. So this actually has another little, I would say, provision to help with compliance in disclosure of any sort of political activity as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jake. Any other questions or concerns regarding the proposed bill? Hearing none, seeing none, this is a vote. to allow for or to approve the departmental legislation bill for Secretary of State's bill. Is there a motion to approve? The chair recognizes Carlos.
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you very much, member. Is there a second? The motion has been properly seconded. Thank you, Jake. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of departmental legislation, please signify by raising your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you guys very, very much. So moved. Now moving on to approval of waiver request, Title 13, political.
Yes. So in front of you, you have waivers for 26 with our recommendations for you. We would like to submit those in total. If there's any questions on any specific ones, I'd be happy to answer that. Additionally, we have about 10 committees that the state prosecutor declined to prosecute for various reasons. And at this point here, we just want to waive the late fees because they have told us that they are no longer going to prosecute or go after the responsible officers for those committees or send it over to the Central Collections Unit. So at this point here, we just want to make sure that they would be off. There's no need to keep them on our books because the state prosecutor has declined to prosecute those. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
All right, hearing none, seeing no questions to the state administrator regarding the request to approve the Title 13 waiver request. Is there a motion to approve the Title 13 waiver request as presented? Jake?
I'd like to motion to approve the Title 13 waiver request as presented.
Thank you very much. It has been so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly seconded. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of the Title 13 waiver request, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. It has been moved, properly seconded, and unanimously voted and affirmed. All right, now we are on to approval of Title 14 waiver request.
Yes, so there's only one in front of you that's from the city of Bowie because they had employed a lobbyist and failed to file timely. So they didn't understand the requirements of this. So we recommend granting the city of Bowie. There are three that we just put in front of you that were denied for your knowledge there, but there's no board action on that. So it's just the one for the city of Bowie.
All right, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Demarinis, I love the city of Bowie. I live next door to it. Why are I feel that we have had corporations and organizations come before us before in Title 14 that were unaware and we didn't grant a waiver. Why is this one different?
Because I think the city was unaware of that when they were having a lobbyist, because this is not doing public business. It was the lobbyist portion of it. We just put it under the Title 14 provision there that they just didn't know that it was a part of the process. And, at this point here, we just wanted to make sure that it was just a city and another government entity. So at this point here, it's just kind of a little bit different, and they are now well aware of their obligations, and we'll move forward with it.
I'm fine moving forward. Do you want to ask that we just reach out to MML,
Yes.
or Municipal League, and just ask them to let their members know for the future.
Yes, especially if they employ a separate lobbyist and everything else. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, great recommendation. Is there a motion to approve the Title 14 waiver request for the city of Bowie? Jake,
Motion to approve.
is there a second? The chair seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of approval of Title 14 waiver versus City of Bowie, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. The vote carries. Now moving on to the early voting center location discussion. I think we have quite a few that we're going to be discussing. They are listed on the agenda, A through K. Jerry, you want
Sure.
to take us through this
So,
list?
First, I just want to say that this is, I just wanted to thank our staff and Lexi who put together this packet. And Melissa, this was a very good packet, easy to understand. This is, basically for the compliance with early voting laws, and it's pursuant to Election Law Article 10-301.1 and the COMAR provisions as well. The counties are required to have so many early voting centers, and then every county has the option to have an additional early voting center as well. But the additional early voting center must be agreed upon with the local board of elections as well as the governing county council or county governing body. So when you see both the counties up here, you always see the required number based upon the formula. And then if you see an optional early voting center there, that is that the county then and the governing body have agreed to fund an additional early voting center. We have made sure that they've met all the requirements in COMAR for population and the ability to service as many voters as possible, as well as the criteria set forth in the law, which was changed in the last General Assembly. So there has been some new changes to that. We have gone through them all. The local local election directors are on call here for us. If you have any specific questions, we have them there. First, I would say Allegheny, Caroline, Carroll, Cecil, Charles, Dorchester, Hartford, Howard, St. Mary's, and Worcester County have all been reviewed, and there have been no public comments on those entities, their site selections, and they have all met the statutory and regulatory requirements. It is our recommendation that they be approved and move forward with it, including for Hartford and St. Mary's, that there are two additional sites also be approved as established as well. So I wanted to break those off because those are a little bit different. And then we have Washington County there, which has required 2 early voting centers, and they have county council and the local board of elections have had agreed to fund and establish a third proposed additional early voting center, but we have received several public comments about that, and we recommend a board discussion on that one there. So
Thank you very much.
I'd like to break those off as like the 9 and then the separate one.
Thank you very much. And we truly appreciate the due diligence by your staff, the presentation that they provided us, and also from Catherine, the insight with the EVC location that was significantly of value for us. I would like to propose to the board to move Allegheny, Caroline, Carroll, Cecil, Charles, Dorchester, Hartford, Howard, St. Mary's, and Worcester, per the recommendation of the state administrator for approval. Chair recognizes Carlos.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been properly seconded. Thank you very much, Jake. All those, any discussion?
Sorry.
All right. I saw Carlos and then Jake. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Jared, I'd like to compliment you and especially all the folks at the local boards of elections and the directors. This was an enormous body of work. And you can tell there was a tremendous amount of thought that went into it. And it was presented in a super clear way. This is a 10 out of 10. Like there should be some attaboys going back to the local folks. Well,
it's always good to have good staff. It makes you look better. So I give all the accolades to them and the team over there. So yes.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for that recognition. Truly appreciate it. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, what Mr. Ayala said is 100% accurate. I opened this document over the weekend, and it was just one of the most readable and easy to understand documents of a complex issue I've ever seen. So just thank you to you and the state board staff and the local staff. I wanted to get clarification on one thing, and frankly, I thought it would be easier to ask this question on this package rather than the next site, just to keep them separate from my head. The statute requires, the COMAR requires, depending on how many sites are required, that either 50% of the population needs to be within 10 miles or 80% of the population needs to be within 5 miles. Can you clarify that? And I'm looking, I'll just pick on Hartford County, love Hartford County, but I'm looking at the circle around Havre de Grace and then the circles around the other sites. Can you explain to me how the site in Havre de Grace meets the 5 miles, 80% threshold? Just so I can understand this.
You know what, Melissa, do you want to take that one for me?
Sure. The short answer is it doesn't, Jake, and it's impossible in Hartford County. So despite every single contortion of early voting centers or combination, they can't meet it. And so even using their optional, they can't meet it because they have such a large land mass. It's not possible. You'll probably see the same thing for Frederick when it comes through.
That was gonna be my next question. Okay, so it is they have to do their best of abilities, and I've noticed in places like St. Mary's where the circles look just beautiful overlapping with each other. Again, this is such a great document. But there is just the reality of geography that sometimes it's not sustainable, but where it is possible to hit those markers, they need to hit those markers.
Yep, absolutely. This is the closest combination that they can get to that number. Any movement, any other directions takes them down, not up.
And I'm assuming it's the same thing with Worcester. You might not get 50% of Worcester's population within those 10 miles, but that's about as close as you're going to get with that one site.
Right, exactly. Moving it across the bridge doesn't do any favors.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And with regards, thank you very much. With regards to public comment for Worcester and Hartford, we're clear to move this forward, correct? All right. So it has been moved and properly seconded. Discussion and discussed. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you so very much. Now we're moving, and the vote carries and affirmed for Allegheny, Caroline, Carroll, Cecil, Charles, Dorchester, Hartford, Howard, St. Mary's, and Worcester early voting center locations approved. Thank you guys so very, very much. Now we're moving on to Washington County, where I believe we have public comment. Jared?
Yes, you have public comment, and I believe you have two speakers if they wanted to address this as well. So
All
I
right.
did not know if you wanted to call them now.
It's probably time for, is there any discussion among, I think you cleared that very well, Jared, in discussing why it is set aside. And I do believe the report that was shared with us shows the rationale. And we have been provided written comment from Washington, residents of Washington County. But for discussion purpose, I'd like to recognize, I think, Jake, you have something you want to bring forward, but I
Thanks,
do know, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought it would be helpful for the millions of people watching at home if staff could just kind of run through the three different sites in Washington County before we had testimony, just so the board is all situated in the same place.
Sure.
I figured that's, yeah, Jared was going to take us through that prior to, but go ahead.
Sure. You know what?
Either Jared or Melissa.
Or Katie will go through the three different sites. So I just wanted to go through the first two sites, just procedurally, just to let you know, are the first two are the required sites, and that is the location of the election board itself and the Hancock site. Those two are the required sites, and then the Boonesboro site is the additional site that was approved by the county council as well. So that, you know, just so that there are those three sites there, but Katie can explain and go through the first two and then the third, so that it's just to make sure that it's separate as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Your chair. So in Washington County, the Washington County Election Center, which is also known as their local board office, is their first site, as Jared has mentioned. That site was also an early voting center in the 2022 election. The local board in Washington County approved the Hancock location as the second site in the most recent board meeting. And then, as Jared said, the Boonesboro site was the optional site that the local board had selected. Some history on Washington County. In 2022, Washington County had their first site as the election center, and the second site was at the Hagerstown Library. So that is providing you a little bit of context to the correspondence that we have received. I also will mention that the election director is on standby if you have any questions specifically of the election director. And I can also help address any specific questions that you may have.
Thank you so very much, Catherine. All right. Any discussion or questions from the board before we allow the public comment or speakers? We have, I think, two public speakers set up to address the board. All right.
Well,
yes,
I'm
Janet,
wondering if
go
we
ahead.
should hear the speakers and then discuss it ourselves.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Jared, you want to make the call?
So, David, I think we're allowed. Can you allow them in now?
I only see Angela, and she can now speak.
Okay,
Great.
there you go.
Welcome, Angela. I think if you can hear us, Chair Summers, thank you for joining us today. Hello, Angela.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can now. Thank you so very much.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Angela Batista, the chair of the Washington County Democratic Central Committee. And I would like to say that the Hagerstown Free Library meets every criteria and legal requirement to ensure that historically disenfranchised voters have a convenient and local place to cast their ballots. This was the site for the last election cycle. There's over 100 parking spots, and it's central to the hub of the city. The city of Hagerstown is the largest municipality in the county, and it also holds the largest number of historically disenfranchised voters. Moving the early voting location away from Hagerstown to Hancock is a clear attempt at voter suppression, and I think it's motivated by racism with the intent to make it harder for people of color to vote. Early voting is intended to make it more accessible. So I ask that you please help protect voting rights in Washington County by denying the Hancock location change request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I truly appreciate you participating in this exercise. If there's any questions or concerns from the members regarding our honorable guests, please let us know. And if there aren't any, thank you very much for participating. All right, seeing none.
So I just want to, I'm sorry, Chair, to interrupt. I just want to have one point of, for procedural purposes here. I just want to make sure that, that the board, I think one of the recommendations is that the board approve the additional site, that the establishment of the additional site. And then once you have that approved, then you can go in and look at what sites are to be approved individually as well.
All right, thank you very much. Chair recognizes Jake. Oh, sorry.
The attorney raised his hand. He always goes first.
Yeah, he's in the corner of my eye over here. Yeah.
Just to make everything as legally pitch perfect as possible, what the state administrator is pointing out is actually for all of the counties. So the board has two decisions to make under the law. Under 10303.1B10, the board has to decide for each county that it approves of even having an additional early voting site, and that would apply to the counties that have submitted one. And then separate what you actually already voted on, the approval of the whole package of sites in a county that they're located. So you can continue with Washington. I would just ask the board to go back to the two counties. I believe they're, forgive me, I have my packet open in front of me.
Harford.
It's Harford and St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Both have noted an optional EVC site. If you could vote on those two counties, whether to approve or disapprove having that additional site.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification. Really appreciate that. Yes, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I understand Mr. Coburn correct, we should go and do that after we're finished with Washington County. I wasn't sure if our other witness or testifier was also here.
No, I think we've just gotten that she had another commitment at this time now and could not come on, but you've had written comments. So yes.
The head of the NAACP in Washington County.
Yes.
I would like to ask Mr. Chairman, if the board is comfortable with it, that we ask the election director just to explain the rationale for these three sites. I think it would be helpful to hear before we make any decisions.
Is that a question?
Yeah, that's a request, but
A request. Oh, we have a request from the board to have the administrator address us in regards to the Washington County EVC locations. Approved.
I believe Mr. Demaris.
If they are willing to give us their rationale, they're not obligated, but if they are willing.
Barry, I think, David, is Barry on the line?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. And before I get started, I wanted to echo what you all had said about the SBE staff and what they did and how they got the early voting sites prepared. From a local board standpoint, the early voting dashboard that was created by the staff was fantastic, and it helped us make sure we had all the required documents put in, and it was probably the easiest way we've ever submitted our early voting document. So thank you to the FB as well. So for a little historical context, Ms. Berry mentioned in 2022, we did have the Hagerstown Library as our second early voting site. The board at the time, the local board, had always, once we knew we were required to have 2 early voting sites, which 2022 was our first year having that requirement, we always wanted to branch out somewhere in the county, because in Hagerstown, we already had an early voting site, and that was the election board headquarters on Virginia Avenue. That site was built for that purpose, built right in the middle of the county where all of the heavily populated areas are. It's a 6,000 square foot room, able to handle large amounts of voters, 150 parking spaces. So it's like the mecca of early voting sites, and so the county commissioners built that for us right in the center of the county to really handle the entire county. And then when we were required to have 2 early voting sites, we wanted to branch out and find some place either in the Boonesboro area or something out in the western part of the county. At the time, there was nothing. And so the only option that we had was the Hagerstown Library. And the board at the time, when they were discussing it, was concerned that there were 2 early voting sites so closely aligned together. They're only about 1.5 miles away from each other. So when you look at the 10-mile radiuses, they almost overlap completely. And so that was a concern, but we really had no other option. And so the board approved it. And we actually had at the time come up with a third site, which was the Smithburg Library, which was out in the eastern part of the county. And we presented that to the county commissioners. They did not approve it. So we went to the state board with just those 2 sites, our headquarters and then the Hagerstown Library. The state board at the time, I would mention, all 5 members actually had concerns, as did our board. And so when it came up for approval, all 5 members made comments that they were concerned that they were so close together, but eventually they approved it. And so those were our 2 sites. Now, as a result of that, the chairman of the Republican Central Committee in our county sued the local board and the state board, which was eventually dismissed. And we also, and the state board received a lot of comments complaining about Hagerstown Library being the second site at that time. And so for the 2024 election this year, as we looked for early voting centers, we actually had more options this time. We actually had 5 options, including our site and including the Hagerstown Library. And so, again, I think it was always the wish of the board to spread out more into the county. If you look at Washington County, it's sort of a miniature version of the state of Maryland when you look at it, right? So you've got the eastern part of the county, which is not as heavily populated. You have the central part of the county, which is very much just like the central part of Maryland is. And then you have the western part of the county, which is probably the least populated area. And so one of the options we had was the Boonesboro American Legion, which helped on the eastern part of the county and the southern part of the county. And then we had the Hancock Town Hall, which of course would have covered the western part. And when we looked at our map and we looked at the 10-mile radius of those 3 sites, those were the 3 best options of all the ones that we looked at. And we looked at every single combination. I think it was 15 combinations of those 5 sites. And every single one of them we looked at. Hancock, Hagerstown Election Board headquarters, and the Boonesboro American Legion was the best option as far as covering all of the county. And as far as accessibility of their voting center to historically disenfranchised communities, the Hagerstown the election board headquarters covers that, because whether you're looking at a 10-mile radius or a 5-mile radius, our site completely covers the entire city of Hagerstown. And so those folks who live in downtown Hagerstown can get to the election center to vote. And a couple of the letters that complained about eliminating the library made the intimation that folks in Hagerstown were going to have to go to Hancock to vote. And of course, that's not the case. They would come to the election center and vote. In fact, one letter said that the folks in Hagerstown would have to drive 30 miles to go to Hancock to vote. And in so doing, that letter actually unwittingly made the case for Hancock, because the voters in Hancock do have to drive 30 miles to the nearest election early voting center. And so that was the reason why we wanted to put one out there, so that folks in the western part of the county had a place that they can vote. The numbers back that up. They back up the fact that folks in western Maryland or western part of our county don't go to early voting because they just don't have that option. It's too far away. So we wanted to put one out there so that they had that ability. The disenfranchised communities have an early voting center. It's our headquarters here in Hagerstown. It was built for that purpose. And again, I would say that the folks in downtown Hagerstown, when we did have an early voting center in Hagerstown, 72% of the folks that live in the city precincts came to our site on Virginia Avenue to vote at early voting. Only 28% actually voted at the library. I think that's about all I have.
I don't know if we've lost our chairman again.
Yeah.
So I'll just,
Jake,
I don't know, Mr. Ayala, if you want to take over this time, or I can. Can't hear you, so.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was proposing that you do it.
Okay. Are there any questions? I have a couple, but.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Still
Yes,
having
Mr. Chairman,
technical
we've got you.
difficulties. Hold on. Can you guys hear? Hello?
In and out, Mr. Chairman. You sound a bit robotic.
I'm sorry. Having some technical difficulties. This is what happens. No.
All right. Why don't, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, we've got some board members with questions. So maybe Ms. Millenson and Mr. Ayala.
No, still no.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. I'm getting, all right. Thank you very much. I'm having some technical difficulties. Please forgive me. Mr. Berry, thank you so very, very much for your comments, for your explanation and rationale. I think there was a question or for you from
we
a board
all
member.
have
I think it was
questions. We all
either
have
Jake
questions.
or Carlos. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Should I recognize this Carlos?
Thank you, Chair. Barry, if you're still on the line, I had a couple questions. Was 2022 the only election in which they used the library?
Yes, that's correct. It was actually the first election where we were required to have more than one early voting center. And so the library was the one we chose because it was the only one we had as a second option.
Got it. And if I heard you correctly, during that election in which the voting center, the purpose-built facility, and the library, which are, I think you said 1.5 miles apart, 72% of the people chose to use the purpose-built facility versus the library. Why do you think that is? Were they just not familiar with the library and that was a new location?
I mean, I have heard, people have told me things, but again, that's just anecdotal. But the folks who have told me why they came to our site, they don't feel comfortable going to the library. The neighborhood in that area is not, the greatest. Some people don't feel safe. I don't know that I just necessarily agree personally. I've never had any issues down there myself, but that is a sentiment that people have said. And again, the election center was built to be the early voting center for that heavily populated area of the central part of the county. And so people came there in 2020 when it was the only early voting center that we had in the county. And so I guess maybe they got used to that. And so they literally went past the library to come to the election center and vote.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jake.
I think Ms. Millenson had her hand raised first. I can wait.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Jackson, I read through the various letters and submissions and comments, and what came out over and over again was the concern about access to safe and reliable transportation to this early voting facility, the election center, and mention of, lack of sidewalks, lack of public transportation, the walking distance for many people, again, concerns about equity, older people. Has there been any consideration given to offering enhanced public transit to that election center during the 8 days of early voting? Increased routes, free fares, something like that. I know other counties have implemented some similar things, or at least proposed it, because again, over and over again, access was the key word here. I mean,
Yes,
I love Washington County. You are blessed with so much natural beauty and historical interest, and our family has vacationed there forever. So, I want the people who live there and have come there to retire to be happy and be able to vote. But again, there is a theme here, a lot of people concerned about access.
Right. And so, yes, I've been in discussions with the Washington County Transit, and they have offered a couple of things. One was a free return ride. If they come to the election center and vote, they get an I voted sticker. If they show up on the bus with an I voted sticker, they get a free return ride. Another thing that they are considering, but this is going to take a little bit more work, and that is what you had suggested, which was actually altering the routes so that they would literally drop off at the front door of the election center. Mm-hmm. Currently, they do drop off at the entrance of the election center, which means they have to walk up the parking lot. But now they're considering actually driving up to the front door. But these are federally approved routes. And so they're going to have to get approval to make modifications to these routes. So that's going to take some doing. But that is something that the Washington County Transit has offered.
Okay.
As far as sidewalks go, I would agree. I would not suggest people that live in downtown Hagerstown walk to our site because there are certainly sidewalks until you get to a certain point. There's a pretty heavily congested intersection that does not have sidewalks at that point. And so that's where it starts to get a little dangerous. So no, I would not recommend that. Also, our central committees in our county for years have always offered free rides themselves for people who want rides to the early voting centers and to polling places. So I would assume that they would still offer that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Janet, you good? I didn't want to overspeak. Okay. Jake, go ahead.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your time today and for the work that you guys have done. I don't want to echo Ms. Millinson, but I love Washington County. It's, Hancock is a neat little place. Got a couple questions, and I want to start off with kind of this thread that we have about the library and the election center, and just something you said at the end. You were talking about a free return ride potentially for anybody who has an I voted sticker and goes on the bus. What about transport too? I'm not familiar with Washington County's transit system, so maybe you could educate me a little bit. How frequently do the buses go? How close to the election center does the bus get?
So there's a transfer station in downtown Hagerstown, right near the city center. And the route that is the best, or there are several routes that will go by the election center, but the one that's the best is the Williamsport route, which is the entire circuit takes an hour. But once it picks up, it's about a 15-minute ride to get to the election center. And it actually will let out at the driveway of the election center. So it's just a matter of going from the entrance of the parking lot up to our building, which is 150 feet or something, and then the bus continues on through its route. And then it comes back around and picks up again, usually about a half an hour later from the time it dropped off at the election center. So that gives the voter, time to get in and mark their ballots and then get back out so that they can take the bus back. So it's a 15-minute ride out to the election center. Once they get picked up, another 15 minutes back to the transfer station. And I actually rode the bus to make sure that it is what they said it was, and it actually was. I timed it at all of the times they told me. It was right, spot on.
And I'm looking at the schedule online. It looks like it picks up once an hour.
That's correct.
But only until 5:45 p.m. is its latest pickup time. And then a little bit confusing. Does this operate on Saturdays and Sundays?
It does. They have different route numbers if it's on a weekend. But
they do operate 7 days a week.
Yes.
Okay. And I should pull this up on Google Maps, but educate me. How far is it from where? Well, in this case, where the majority populace, and especially you just know, not to pick on you, you just know Hagerstown far better than I. If there are enclaves where Black residents are more likely to live, how far it is from those places in Hagerstown to the Board of Elections office?
Yeah, that would be certainly within the limits of the corporate city limits of Hagerstown, and really, African American population lives anywhere, within those corporate city limits. We have, a decent number. They're in the western part of the city, but most of them are right there in the town. And so, the farthest distance anywhere in the city of Hagerstown would be about 4 miles to get to the election center.
Gotcha. And you had. And I want to get to the Hancock site in a minute, but you had mentioned in your presentation the commissioner's input into the site, and I was curious: do they have a role in this legally, or is this entirely a board decision?
Well, the board decision is the first 2 sites, and then the third site, once the board approves it, the next thing we have to do is go to the local governing body and get their approval, which we did.
To have a third site, or as to where that third site will be?
Well, we had to tell them where it was going to be so they could approve it, but I think what the legal term is, they're just approving the third site. But obviously, had some interest in where was that third site before they approved it.
And so the first 2 sites that the board approved were the Board of Elections and Hancock. And then that third optional site that the commissioners and then the board approved was the Boonsboro one. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. So the Hancock site, I'm confused about it a bit, and this is why I asked my question earlier. Hancock is not a large town. I've been there. I don't know if other board members have been there. I guess what I don't understand is, why was the decision made that Hancock's populace was more deserving of easy accessibility to an early voting site than the city of Hagerstown?
Because the city of Hagerstown already has an early voting site.
But not within the city borders.
Our site is a quarter mile from the city line.
Okay, and not the cities. I mean, you had talked about 3-4 miles before,
Right.
in terms of where the populace is.
1.5 miles from city center. That's where our site is located.
Okay. Did the board have any discussions about equity and how this could have a impact from a racial standpoint?
I wouldn't say racial.
Okay, so that's no. Sorry, was there a discussion about how this could negatively impact the Black population in the county?
The way that we discussed the early voting site was looking at election law and code. And did these sites satisfy all of the election laws and factors to be considered in COMAR? And that's how we came up with 3 sites. We felt that these 3 sites best answered those. As far as accessibility early voting center to historic disenfranchised communities, we believe that the election center in Hagerstown meets that consideration.
Gotcha. The reason I ask is, when you were talking, one of the things you said was that the board determined that of the 15 options, I think you said the board had these 3 sites were the best option available. And I'm curious what parameters the board did use to decide that these 3 sites, including one that is only accessible to a small group of voters, was the best option. Like what parameters did the board use to decide that?
Right, because we looked at all of the factors. And so in 2022, when we only had the election center and the Hagerstown Library, the complaint against us was that we did not meet the factor of equitable distribution throughout the county. And it was hard to argue at that point. And so that's why we're always trying to get some early, now that we had to have more than one, we need to get some that are branched outside of the city of Hagerstown, so that all of the voters of the county had equal access to an early voting center, not just one particular population.
I appreciate that. I'm curious why you say it was hard to argue when the court threw out the suit in 2022.
Well, because nobody in the southern part of the county or eastern part of the county or western part of the county had quick access to an early voting center. So in our minds, it also did not meet equitable distribution throughout the county. But again, at the time, the Hagerstown Library was all we had. And so that's what, and we had to have.
I understand that. I think what I'm trying to understand is why the suit was thrown out in 2022 didn't have merit, but the board decided that, and look, I recognize you don't want to face a lawsuit again, so that's part of this. And this is not about you, not about the individual board members. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this decision. The court threw out the lawsuit in 2022, which normally would give people confidence that what they did was okay, at least, or was not blatantly not okay. But I guess the thinking is that the folks, how many people live in Hancock?
Well, the city itself is about 1,000 people, but the 10-mile radius is about 3,100 people.
Okay. And I notice Berkeley Springs and Warfordburg on the board. I'd be honest, I've never heard of Warfordburg before, but I have to imagine Berkeley Springs has at least that many, if not more, folks that we would be serving if we had some other form of government. I find it interesting that where that circle is. I guess what I'm trying to understand is the decision was made that those 3,100 voters deserved a site instead of other. And was there any testimony at the board from NAACP or other community groups with concerns about not choosing the Hagerstown Library? Was that at all discussed by the board?
Yes, we actually had a public comments period. It was very well attended. Probably about 50 people came, and including a representative from the NAACP and she spoke. And yeah, so.
But the board decided that wasn't persuasive.
Yeah, I think what you're saying are two different things. We didn't say we need to get rid of the one at the Hagerstown Library and put one out in Hancock. That's not what we said.
Mm-hmm.
What we said is, here's the county. Here are our 5 options. What 3 are the best? That best meet all of the election law, all of the requirements, and all of the factors to be considered. And we came up with our election center, Boonesboro American Legion, and the Hancock Town Hall. Because again, when you look
even though the Hancock one doesn't meet.
What's that?
Even though the Hancock one doesn't meet the criteria of 50% of the voters within a 10-mile radius.
Well, is that how we're supposed to do it? Like only one site, you have to look and see if it meets 50%, or all 2 or 3 or whatever it is required. My understanding is the 2 that you're looking at least 50% are within 10 miles of one of those sites. And so you can't say 50% have to be within Hancock. That's not the case. it's 50% have to be within 10 miles of one of the two.
Okay. And I guess my last question, and obviously you don't control the commissioners, but the commissioners clearly play a role in this from what you were saying. I guess my question is, has there been any discussion with the commissioners in terms of how to make sure that this historically disadvantaged and disenfranchised community in Hagerstown has equal access and accessibility to the early voting sites? I mean, I know we discussed a little bit potential with transportation, but do you know if the commissioners, has there been any public comment from the commissioners about what steps they would take to make these sites more accessible?
I'm not aware of any comments the commissioners made.
Gotcha. Really, really appreciate the time and information, and sorry for the raft of questions.
Mr. Berry, I truly, truly appreciate your patience with us and your willingness to be here. We have a follow-up from Janet Millicent, one of our board members.
Yeah.
Janet?
Thank you. We have heard a lot about people in Hagerstown, people in Hancock, pluses and minuses. Was there any comment or feedback or input from people in Boonesboro? You look at these circles, there's a tremendous overlap with things in the city of Hagerstown, but no one has, I've not seen any comment or input on whether, Boonesboro is viewed as a really helpful additional site, or if anyone has any objections. Did that come up at all?
I'm not aware of any negative comments about Boonesboro. I have had some people say that they thought Boonesboro was a great idea. Boonesboro is a fairly heavily populated area just outside the town of city of Hagerstown. And then, within that 10-mile radius, would certainly meet more of the southern county folks who also sometimes feel like they, got to drive 45 minutes to get to an early voting center. So, generally it was positive comments about Boonesboro.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for that clarification, clarifying question, Janet. Thank you, Mr. Bear, for your openness, your candidness, your willingness, and your commitment to the community. And we understand what it takes. I know I'm not on camera right now. I'm having some AV issues, but we understand what it takes to be a servant of the people. And so we really, really appreciate what you're doing. And we are here to assist and advise and to move in that direction as well. Thank you very much. And if there's no other questions for Mr. Berry, informally excused if you wish. Thank you so very, very much. Now, if the chair understands AG Corbin, AGA Corbin correctly, we need to hear a motion on Washington County. Yes, Jake.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to split my motion a little bit here. This is weird. What I'd like to do is motion that we accept the Boonesboro location, the optional one, and that we approve the Washington County Election Center. And then I'll have a separate motion not to approve the Hancock one. I just want to be clear and on the up front with the board. I don't feel comfortable with the Hancock site, and frankly, with the work that what Mr. Jackson shared was helpful, but didn't give me the comfort that I was looking for. But I don't want to delay the local board from doing the work that they need to do. And I think we can approve those two sites and then have them come back to us with a replacement for the second site. So I just want to put cards on the table that's where my head is. And
the chair duly thank you. Sorry, the chair duly recognizes your motion to piecemeal Washington County to set aside Hancock. I would seek guidance from either Jared or Dan in this regard to if this is permissible, if the motion is permissible. I know we have a motion on the floor.
Right. I think procedurally, the cleanest way to divide this is to have a motion and take a vote on Boonesboro alone. So the board can vote to approve or not the optional additional site, which is the Boonesboro site, and then a second motion on approving or not the required sites, which are Hancock and the Washington County Board of Elections.
Yes.
All right, Carlos, thank you.
All right, I suppose
Chair recognizes you. Okay.
I suppose I should take off mute before I raise my hand.
No, it happens, man. It's all good.
Yeah, I do it a lot. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that we approve the third site in, am I going to pronounce it right? Boonesboro?
Yes.
Lovely place.
Look forward to going there someplace. Sometime.
Is there a second?
I like to second that.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, you raise your hand or voice vote. Aye. I don't know if we have a consensus here.
Aye.
I see it now.
We did. Yeah, 53, and then you.
We have an affirmative, all present voting to approve the motion that was properly seconded. Thank you so very, very much for Boonesboro. Is there, the floor is open and the chair is open to a second motion?
So,
yes.
Mr. Coburn, is the correct motion here then to vote to approve the Washington County Election Center site, or is it, do we vote on them as a package?
So in essence, are we able to vote in the affirmative? Are we able to vote to approve and to set aside?
Right. Are you asking if you can vote separately on Washington County and separately on Hancock?
Hancock.
I believe the state board shall vote on an early voting center. All the language in both the code and COMAR is singular, so you can do each individually. You can vote first on the Washington County Election Center and then separately on Hancock. You can do them one at a time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve Washington County Location 1, the Washington County Election Center.
All right, there's a motion before the floor. Is there a second? Yes, Carlos?
Second.
All right, it's been properly second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands or voice vote. Chair, aye. And it is affirmed unanimously. Yes, thank you very much. I see you. You can't see me, I can see you, but we all, it is in the affirmative and so moved. Thank you guys so very, very much for that. Carlos?
Yes, I'd like to move that we approve the Hancock Center.
I'm sorry?
I move that we approve the Hancock Early Voting Center.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Seeing none, hearing none, that motion fails. Is there any other motion? Go ahead. Is there any other discussion? All right.
Yeah, I'd like to, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Carlos?
I think, coming from a rural area, there's differences in public transportation. There's differences in distances that people have to travel. Taking away that, if you live on the far east side of the county, far west side of the county, I don't know what that is. Is that 50 miles round trip, 60 miles round trip? That's a pretty big imposition. to have people have to drive all the way to Hagerstown to be able to vote early.
Hello? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Jake?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm very sympathetic to that. I've done that drive and it's a long one. I don't know though how to work that out with the fact that we'd be making a voting center for 3,000 voters within that 10-mile radius exclusively, while we have now this board has comment from the NAACP and others with concerns about historically disenfranchised communities, and we have passed regulations and legislation has been passed talking about the need to focus on historically disenfranchised communities, and I just don't know how to align those two. And my hope is that maybe the local board can come to us with a better solution, but I don't know how I'm looking at these other maps that exist in rural counties on the shore, or Allegheny, and other counties seem to have been able to come up with a way to better handle this. And I'd like to see if, Washington County said that they had multiple options. This one doesn't pass the test for me.
Thank you, Jake. And definitely recognize, Carlos, your concern, and Jake, your shared concerns and questions, as well as Board Member Janet Millinson. I think we get there with more work product. And I think this allows us to assist Washington in getting to what best suits the residents of Washington County with our input. They have an opportunity to come back with a newly proposed site or comment and understanding with regards to their rationale for the Hancock site. I don't know how that meshes with our state regulations and under COMAR with regards to, at this time, EVC, early voting center locations. And so that's where we stand now. Did I hear someone have a question? I'm sorry. I did not mean, I just wanted to share those comments from my understanding as to what we are awaiting from to receive from Washington County prior to the election.
So Washington County now with this will go back, and it's just the board. They don't have to go in front of the county council to determine a new site to propose to you. Hopefully, when we, at the end of this meeting, choose a November meeting as well. So they'll have those, and then they'll come back with, and we will present with the map so you can see the allocation of all three. But instead of approving the optional site, you'll just be approving the one required site if necessary.
Right, and it seemed that Barry, if I was hearing him correctly, he may not have full understanding of the COMAR reg. It sounded like he was pretty well versed, but is our staff supporting this effort or no?
Yes, the staff is supporting them, but we do make deference for facilities and everything else along the way there for it as well. So
okay,
and just to let you know, in the future, we've kind of helped work with this because one of the departmental bills that you approved earlier was the use of public buildings for early voting centers. So hopefully that will get passed so that this will only be a one-time issue as we move forward, that there'll be more buildings available to allow for, Washington County and other counties for early voting centers so that, that will be available to them. So.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Jared. Jake, before we move on to old business,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'll be quick. Two things. First off, I do want to say again, I don't think there's any ill intent by Mr. Jackson or by the members of the Board of Elections. Like, I want to be clear, like, appreciate the work that they're doing. I think it falls a little bit short, but I don't want to in any way allege anything else going on, and I'm appreciative of their efforts. The other thing I'd just like to ask, and Mr. Demarinis or Ms. Berry, as you're talking to the Washington County Board, one of the emails that stood out to me was from Kristen Elshire, who I guess is a member of the City Council, who talked about the senior population of the city of Hagerstown and their ability to get there. The library is apparently within walking distance of more than 500 senior housing units. And I'm curious how that, if that was taken into account, or if that's something that the county could look at in that regard. But I just wanted to point out. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And will there be follow-up per that request or suggestion from
we'll
member Weissman?
I think, Washington County, and we'll be in touch with Mr. Jackson, and by law we'll have it for the next meeting for approval.
All right. Thank you so very much. All right. With that robust discussion and effort, thank you guys so very much. On to old business. Discuss approval of State Board of Elections bylaws. So this is not a vote. We are short a member, our honored vice chair, and we will hold off on any votes for this measure. It is not on the agenda to vote. It is on the agenda to present what I think is a tremendous work product meted out by and led by our board member Jake Weissman, Carlos, and Ayala, and Janet Millinson. But initially, the board members working together to put forth a one document, comprehensive suggestions for and/or recommendations for updates to our bylaws, which I think is a tremendous work product. And it is being presented now to move forward for possible vote in November. But I wanted to, if there is any discussion or presentation of the record, please at this time, if you'd like, present yourself or your statement for discussion or question. Yes, Jay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'll be quick. Everyone has a document in front of them and can review at their leisure. I do want to be clear that this is a document that's compiled of suggestions from myself, Mr. Ayala, and Ms. Millinson, but it is not a document that we have discussed in terms of the individual issues. I just don't want to give the impression that there is already agreement on these. It's just a compilation of the suggestions made by myself, Mr. Ayala, and Ms. Millinson, as well as just thoughts that were gathered from conversations with yourself and Mr. Volk.
Duly recognized, and also to know that information was gleaned or gained outside of a quorum. It was one-on-one. Yes, Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, just to comment that some of our suggestions are simply updating things. I guess this was last revised, parts of it in 2016. So, we want to put in that video meetings are okay. There is a URL to the ethics people for the state. The URL is out of date. There's some things that are simply updating it for current operational, whatever the right word is here, consistency. So I don't know that we're proposing any major changes to how we do business, but again, polishing and improving and fixing some minor tweaks.
Which I think is an excellent excellent point to bring forward, because we did present this to the board, the administration, and they can look at this prior to if there are changes, grammatical, stylistic changes that need to be made. I think that they could present that to us as at the time in November. If they see fit. It still does not mean, it still allows us to vote on it, but it also gives us an updated record prior to that to look at that document. I mean, we could make that a suggestion is for them to scrub the document prior to of grammatical, stylistic, spelling updates. And in recognition of Board Member Millicent's comments. So I do appreciate that. And that could expedite things significantly. Just a point that just doubling up on Board Member Millicent's point. All right. Any other or further discussion to be addressed? Or like I said, I would like the Vice Chair to be here, but if there's anything anyway, because we still have room for discussion in November around the suggestions, the updated bylaws.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we'll probably have some discussion before vote, but there's nothing that jumps out at me. I think there's going to be some conversation about how we want to set up the meeting time or lack thereof. I think there's, Mr. Ayala made a very wise suggestion about changing to gender neutral language, which then Ms. Millicent, amended. I think we'll want to have a conversation about public participation that Mr. Ayala raised, and I think there's a couple others, including if we have any input either from members of the public over the between this meeting and the next, or from state board staff, that they have anything they want. But at least for myself, I don't think there's anything that we need to engage in discussion at this time.
That's what happens when all the work gets done up front. Thanks a lot, Jake. I really appreciate that, guys. Very functional. Also, with that being said, moving on to new business, there is none. And per the agenda, we're moving on to disclosure of campaign contributions. Is there any disclosure of campaign contributions at this time? I know you can't see me. I don't have any disclosures. I don't have any disclosures of campaign contributions. It doesn't look like anyone else does at this current time. Thank you very much. So now moving on to scheduling the November meeting and polling places plan review, early voting center and polling places.
I'm sorry, Chair, this one will just be for the rest of the early voting centers and polling place. So we wouldn't necessarily do any like old business or new business. It would just be for that one caveat, and you'll be getting more of those, lovely maps. But for the other remaining early voting centers, and well as all the polling place plans for the 24 counties as well. So we're just going to make that its own like little separate meeting rather than having another full meeting, because it might be, it could be long, hopefully not, but just want to be that. And then the December meeting will be with all the with if we have regs or any of the other normal businesses at that point.
So it appears you're recommending that we have an abbreviated meeting on November 16th, just the Thursday prior to Thanksgiving? That's my understanding.
I would recommend even going beyond that if it's possible to do it the week after Thanksgiving, because some of the early voting plans will be submitted to us that week. And so it will give us some time to facilitate it. If possible, like the 30th would be fantastic, or the 29th. because it would just be just for that type of a meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
I
All
think
right. Works for
November
you.
17th, the deadline for the local boards.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's why the 16th doesn't really work, but it'll give us time then. And then Thanksgiving week would just be problematic, but it'll give us some time to compile, because we need some time to compile and get it to you. We want to get it to you with some time there, but at the same time, we would like it done, if we can, do it on the 30th, that would be, ideal.
All right, and it's also your suggestion that on the 30th, we only cover early voting and poll place.
Polling place, yes.
The board, hearing from the board regarding that suggestion, what do you guys think?
Works for me, yeah.
All right, sounds good. So we will be addressing the bylaws in December.
Yes.
All right, thank you so very much. Now, how did the 2 o'clock time work for you guys? Thank you, Janet, for this. How does the 2 o'clock time work for you guys? I do want to recognize that.
I will readily admit, Mr. Chairman, we can discuss this with the bylaws, I guess. A little bit earlier is always better for me, and it's simply because sometimes we tend to run long, and depending on the day, some days I have to get my kids. So that is my only concern there. Are we going to be done before aftercare closes? So that's my only concern about starting at 2. But I'm fine with the 30th being at 2, and we can discuss all between now and then and figure it out.
Okay. I like 2 o'clock on the 30th. That works for me.
Yep, works for me.
As far as we know, will that be acceptable to Bill Velp also, our Vice Chair?
One second. I think the chair lost connection again.
Oh dear.
Did you lose connection?
Yeah, I lost connection.
Okay, so the chair is just calling me. He lost connection. So I think we can adjourn. Okay, we're going to adjourn. We can adjourn the meeting with this, and we will basically. I guess, Mr. Weissman, can you?
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry. I'm the chair on the phone, and I'm like, so.
I like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? All right. I guess we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll send it out for the meeting. So yes.
Sounds good.